Good morning, all. Welcome to the March 25th Board of Commissioners open session. And today we're going to do agency budget hearings, and there is no public comment at today's meeting. And that should have been all displayed on the website. But as we always like to do, we're going to start with Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. And I think today is Maryland Day.
Correct. It is. Yes.
No, it's,
Maryland basketball day, that's for sure.
Maryland basketball day.
Keep winning.
Double overtime win?
Uh-huh.
They're winning.
That's good. That's good.
Ted, did you want to start us out with anything, or just go straight into agency hearings? So, first on the agenda is the state's attorney's office.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning. Thank you all for hearing from us this morning. I know that you will recall back in FY23, before you all took office, county commissioner employees got 10% salary increase plus longevity that our office didn't get. And after I came in and during the FY24 budget cycle, we asked for that, and you gave us half of that, which we greatly appreciate. So as we sit here today, we're still 5% in the hole vis-a-vis other county employees. So this year, our request is for that remaining 5% that we didn't get in FY23, which would essentially make our office whole. So Alan's going to provide you all with some background and justification for our request, but I can tell you that our attrition rate has been alarming. So as a result, I think we need to do a better job of retaining our newer employees so that we're not continuing to train new employees over and over and over again. So Alan, take it away.
Sure, and before we get started, we also wanted to mention, we wanted to thank Kelly Burke and Heidi Pepin for helping us out with our budget. We've had an opportunity to review the proposed budget with them and greatly appreciate all the work that they put in. So our 5% is above what the request is at this time.
And they do a great job for us, too. I want y'all to know that.
And so, as Haven said, we're requesting 5% across the board for all positions, filled and open. And that is in addition to already the cost of living and the merit that is slated in this year's FY25 budget. And I think you all recall, this saga really started for our office back in July of 2022, when we first learned about the 10% salary increase in longevity for the commissioner's employees. And interestingly enough, if I recall correctly, that increase was the result of a study, and the study was done because of retention issues for the commissioner employees, as well as open positions that couldn't be filled. And that's kind of where we're finding ourselves in as well these days. As indicated in as for FY23, you guys were kind enough to give us an equitable adjustment at that time. FY24, we told you at that time we were coming back FY24 to request the 10% salary increase in longevity, which we did, and you provided us with a 5% lump sum, which then Mr. Shoemaker used for some above the board salary increases as well as some longevity. And then we were before you guys last year for the FY 25 budget, and we requested that additional 5% that we hadn't received, and we did not get that last year.
Alan, what's above the board salary increases? What does that mean?
That means that just a general increase. So I'm saying it didn't go towards longevity. It was doled out to people above their salary is basically what I meant.
Was that self-done within the SAO, within your office, or was it directed from us?
No, you guys just gave us the 5%, and then
Right.
what Mr. Shoemaker did is he gave some salary increases and then also provided some to longevity. I don't have the exact figures as to how it was broken
It
down.
was like 3 and 2, I think.
Something like that.
Heidi worked some magical calculations for us within the office, was kind enough to do that.
So we used 3% across the board of that 5% that you gave us above and beyond in FY '24, and 2% of that I used for longevity increases.
So nothing went above and beyond 5% that we allocated to the state's attorney's office?
No.
No.
You gave us 5% of our 10% ask. You gave us
Okay.
half that, and that's the way I distributed it.
I'm getting a little quizzical looks, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. Just,
I think.
that we're all
if-
on the same sheet of
I don't
music.
know exactly where you're going with your question, but if you did what I'm thinking you did, some people may have gotten more than 5% on an individual basis. Is that
Yes.
correct? Because if I were there longer than the next person, I might have gotten, let's say, 6 or 7%, whereas somebody else got the base 3 or 4%.
Right.
Yes,
right?
internal longevity was accounted for like a sliding
Yes.
scale.
So I don't know if that's what you were asking.
Yeah,
But
kind-
across the
yeah.
board, generally speaking, the folks got 5%. There might
5%.
have been somebody who got a little bit more and somebody
Because
got a
of the
little less.
longevity,
Yes.
right.
Just-
Okay.
Does that help?
yeah.
So just in terms of where we stand today, we currently have 54 employees. We have 2 vacancies. We have an admin position that's vacant. We also have an attorney position that's vacant. I can't recall the last time when we were fully staffed with attorneys. We typically have an opening for an attorney. It seems like when we end up filling the open position, somebody else ends up leaving. 61% of our employees have less than 5 years of service, and actually 17 of our employees are under 35 years of age.
Alan, I'm sorry, could you go back to the last slide real quick? I apologize. So you said, even though the slide says that there are 2 vacancies, there are more than 2 vacancies?
No, there's 2 vacancies.
Okay.
What I was saying is that we filled attorney positions. For example, we'll hire an entry-level attorney, and then we've had a more senior attorney leave. So it's just, we're always down an attorney. It's just been a different position at different
Like,
times.
almost like on a rolling basis? Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
And so, obviously, and everyone's familiar with this, that to continue to hire new people, it costs money. It costs approximately 6 to 9 months of a salary to replace an employee. And we have, a lot of our supervisors in the office, rather than doing their work, they're spending time training new employees. So it's been an internal drain on the employees in our office. And typically, folks in the public sector stay a little longer than those in the private sector, 6.8 years versus 6.2 years. And they've also noticed, and this could be a generational thing, but workers who are more towards the end of their careers, 55 to 64 years of age, they kind of had a median tenure much longer than the younger workers these days. It was typically about 9.6 years, where the employees are 25 to 34 years of age seem to be only staying at jobs for less than 3 years. And so it's an investment in our office is really what we're looking for. So this is kind of, since 2023, we've had a 42% turnover ratio. And these are, all the folks that have left, 23 overall departures. You can see it's not just one specific area, it's throughout the office. It's admin positions, our evidence review unit, assistant state's attorneys. I think 5 of the 7 who have left since 2023 went to the Attorney General's office. And, we take our budget very seriously. So when we begin our budget meetings in the year, we actually review our budget line by line to see what, if any, areas can we look to save money, what, if any, areas, if it's going to increase, is it just kind of a cost of living situation? So this year, we haven't asked for any new positions, even though I think we could probably generate another position in our evidence review unit. You guys have been kind enough to give us positions throughout the years, but those folks are still really busy with all the body-worn camera and in-car camera videos. We're not asking for any new vehicles or anything like that this year. We coordinated with the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy. We went through a grant webinar with them to see what, if any, other grants were available. And in fact, Tim Weber from our office has applied for a new grant this year that we haven't heard about yet, but we're hoping to hear about that. I think that grant, if fully awarded, would be $100,000, and that would be something we could put towards the school programs. And we've teamed with Baltimore City. We started our regional Veterans Treatment Court. We were lucky enough to piggyback onto Baltimore City, who had a Veterans Court for about 10 years, and they've expanded it to include us, Howard County, Harford County, Baltimore County, to afford us the opportunity to get involved with their resources that they've set up for their veterans. And that's something that we're able to do free of charge, so to speak. It's all part of Baltimore City. And this year, because we've had some of our senior people leave, our pension and benefits are actually going to decrease by about $30,000. And this year, we are only requesting the 5% across the board. We're not requesting longevity. So we understand that, we have to be careful as to what exactly we're asking for. And so we're not looking for longevity. We're just looking for the 5% across the board, with the idea that we're looking more for retention of those younger employees in our office.
Have we had any veterans to date go through the veterans treatment?
We have not. We've actually identified a number of possible candidates.
A whole bunch of them, in
And
fact.
we've had difficulty. We will recommend them. We will reach out specifically to the Public Defender's Office. And for some reason, the Public Defender's Office is not as forthcoming with recommending Veterans Court for individuals.
So our hands are tied in that regard, because Defense Counsel has to be willing to play ball. I think a lot of that is because they would rather have their clients deal with the judges here locally than go through the rigors of the Veterans Treatment Court program in Baltimore City.
And we actually had one individual that we identified as a possible Veterans Court candidate who initially had a private attorney. So I reached out to that private attorney and spoke to the attorney, explained the Regional Veterans Treatment Court, and that attorney was on board, but the individual had several cases and ended up then getting the Public Defender's Office to represent that person for all the cases, and subsequently the person declined to participate in the Veterans Court. So
That's good, good information. I think we should capture that, document it, and, it's good to have a program, and it sounds good, but it's only good if it's actually being used.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Absolutely.
if there's reasons why it's not being used from, like you mentioned, I'd like to capture that and say, hey, how can we make this better?
Sure.
And how can we make this more available for our Carroll Countyans that are
Yep.
going through this?
Well, it takes time, Commissioner, and I was
Sure.
talking to the administrator down there the other day, and it takes time to ramp up anything new people aren't
Yeah.
familiar with, and somebody's got to be like the Neil Armstrong
Yep.
of the program, and we'll get there. We just have to
Yeah,
publicize
it's only been in
it.
place since November, so.
Right, right. Okay.
But once you get some successes through, word spreads, and I think it'll blossom.
And in fact, I'm actually going down this afternoon to watch the Regional Veterans Treatment Court docket with a couple of people from Bureau of Citizen Services.
Okay.
Because when Mr. Stewart and Mr. Shoemaker went down, I didn't have the opportunity to go observe the
Yeah,
docket. So
yeah.
we're going down this afternoon. So just so, once again, more familiarity with actually what they do on a daily basis down there.
Fantastic.
With the Veterans Court, so it's Carroll County and Baltimore City. Are there any other counties included in that?
Harford, Howard, and
Baltimore
Baltimore
County.
County.
Yeah.
Is there any way to find a comparison of how they're handling those other areas, since obviously we're not getting through? Is there a way to find out? I mean,
You might
is that
be able to
across the
ask
board, or?
Sure, we can get you numbers
Okay.
on that. When he goes down, I'll tell him who to talk to down there, and they keep those.
I'm just curious whether we're all seeing that right now, since it is a new program, or is it,
Isolated to Carroll.
regional?
It took a while to ramp up even in the city, and then Anne Arundel had the first one in the state, and it takes a while. And someone, like I said, the transportation down the city, which United Way handles and all these things, there's always objections to overcome.
Sure.
But like I said, once there's familiarity, once you've seen successes, it kind of builds on itself through word of mouth.
Okay, appreciate it.
If a veteran does decide to take advantage of it, is the mentor local or is the mentor assigned in Baltimore?
Now, they have mentors down there.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. So they would get a mentor that's already involved with the court,
Right,
which makes
exactly.
sense.
Yep.
They know.
Trained and all that sort of thing.
But they're always looking for volunteer mentors, so there's
Right.
no reason somebody from Carroll couldn't start volunteering down there just to help out and like, say this is a Carroll guy, I want him since I'm from
Right.
Carroll, so.
So that's kind of our pitch. You know, we're hoping that you guys will consider the additional 5% above what our budget recommendation is. And that will give us an opportunity to ensure that some of our less experienced staff or folks who haven't been with us for a number of years decide to stick with us and hopefully make our office a career rather than a jumping off point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you all know the pivotal role that we play in terms of public safety and keeping the bad guys off the street. And I also think that you all are familiar that our office has had a fair amount of success in doing that. If you read the paper or watch the news, you probably have seen that. But we really can't continue to bleed people like we have without impacting our overall mission at some point. And we recognize, of course, that we can't compete dollar for dollar with Anthony Brown's office, but I strongly believe that this extra 5% would go a long way towards us doing a better job of keeping the talent that we have here. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm not sure, just a quick couple comments. I'm not sure what Anthony Brown is doing for Carroll County right now, so.
Not a whole
I
lot,
wouldn't, but we'll leave that for another day. And I appreciate what you're doing for Carroll County collectively, because this is where, rubber meets the road. You don't have to be the largest funding, effort to be a priority. And you're not the largest funded effort. And you are absolutely, a priority. But as we know, you can't have everything being a priority when you have only one pie of money. And where I'm going is, and we've talked about this last year and we've talked about it before when it comes to revenue. If we had opportunity to increase revenue into this county, to use, not to earmark, but to make available for, this type of program operationally, because that's really what revenue would do, would you support that?
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, I know that you guys were elected to do a very tough job under particularly trying circumstances. I know that you can't exactly say that a revenue increase would be dedicated to one particular, avenue.
Right.
However, to the extent you made that clear to folks, I wholeheartedly believe, and I think I told you this last year or the year before, whenever it was, that the people of Carroll County would support that.
Yeah, I do too. And I think, you know, the more we put attention to safety, security, and public education like we've been working to do, and we focus revenue growth on those needs, I think we're in a good place, so, but I appreciate it. Thanks.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you.
Carroll County Public Schools. Morning.
Morning, Cindy.
Morning.
Morning, gentlemen.
Oh, yeah, you too, Mr. Burke.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is it okay for us to go ahead?
Sure.
All right. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Board of Education's FY26 operating budget request again. We were just here for a presentation on the operating budget and the Blueprint fiscal compliance. So I thought we would forego a formal presentation today. Also, the agency hearing form summarizes the board's funding request to you. As you know, the Board of Education, through 2 motions, made a funding request of $57 million in new revenue for FY26. The first motion, a request for $13 million, specifically addressed the deficit for the FY26 operating budget. So if you were to fund the board's motion for their operating budget, it would allow us to fund the 3rd year of salary commitment with our 3 support service unions. And those employees would receive their promised increase. And on top of that, we would not have to pay a portion of our increased utilities charges with one-time funds. We also wouldn't have to end the outdoor school program. We would not have to end the 1-to-1 technology ratio for students in grades 3 through 5, and we wouldn't have to reduce the planned salary increase for bus drivers and assistants from 5% to 3%. So the board's second motion for the additional $44 million in revenue was intended to offset the process of fiscal compliance for Blueprint. And in essence, $44 million would allow us to leave our schools resourced as they are today. And we could just layer on the required resources for the schools who had the larger populations of comp ed and MLL students, as well as students with disabilities. We wouldn't have to make all the changes of moving staff around from one school to another or cutting certain positions in order to spend that money in different ways. And on the topic of Blueprint fiscal compliance, there are also some evolving processes at the state level that I wanted to mention this morning. First, I want to thank the Carroll delegation, our Board of Education members, and those of you who've been working to explain our situation and build a coalition for us in Annapolis. In particular, I want to thank Delegate Josh Stanko, who from his seat on the House Appropriations Committee has worked tirelessly on this initiative on behalf of CCPS. He's reached across political divides to engage legislative leaders and other important state officials. Locally and at the state level, we've worked hard with Delegate Stanko and the Maryland State Education Association and the Carroll County Education Association to help state officials understand the impact that the pace of this fiscal compliance will have on our schools, our students, and our employees. And in the past few weeks, these efforts have led to some really important outcomes at the state level. Earlier in March, I, along with Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Shockney, met with staff from the Accountability and Implementation Board, the AIB, and the Maryland State Department of Education, as well as other key state officials. At that meeting, CCPS committed to working with the AIB resource allocation consultants to examine CCPS's fiscal compliance data, review our Blueprint fiscal compliance work group report plan, and consider additional innovative solutions to maximize the process of fiscal compliance implementation. And we welcome that support, and the process of working with their consultants is already underway with us. At its meeting on March 20th, the AIB adopted a waiver policy through which local school systems may apply for flexibility in implementing fiscal compliance under Joint Policy Number 2. And the application date for a waiver is April 1st. CCPS intends to apply for a waiver seeking flexibility on that date and make our case for flexibility in implementing changes at the school level. In light of these updates, I will be announcing that we will pause some of the more impactful parts of our fiscal compliance plan to allow these developments with the AIB to unfold. While we will still have to move forward on July 1st with the proposed compliance changes that involve our administrative and supervisory staff, we will not implement the changes at the school and classroom level. I'll be communicating these updates to our communities and will provide details at the next scheduled town hall on April 2nd. So that's where we are for the operating budget and then for the blueprint fiscal compliance piece.
Well, I'll start off. First off, I appreciate the partnership that you, CCPS leadership, and the Board of Education have with us and the delegation. The candid discussions go a long ways. And you know what, I won't say pride myself. It's not about pride. What I say behind closed doors, I say in open doors, you know, in front of others, you know, and that's important, that we're very candid that way. I appreciate your comment about the pause, because that takes leadership to do, as opposed to sit back and wait, you know, to see if the waiver that you submit on April 1st actually gets through. I believe it will, but I believe in order for it to give us confidence that it's going to get through, we got to step up and we got to do something. And, you know, it may be out of cycle with all our work groups and stuff like that, but we got to give a little to get some. And, you know, the MOE and getting above what's necessary to the $13 million, I think will be a testament if we conclude from here that that's where we want to go, that the AIB and the state's going to see that we're serious about this. So I'd like to walk away from this meeting knowing that myself and my colleagues agree that we're going to increase the funding, the operational dollars, to $13 million from where it is today. Now, you know, it's a 7.1 whatever, so we could say 6, but at the end of the day, it's to get us to $13 million, correct, operationally?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's going to be important. I mean, we discussed so many things, and we're going to have work groups and all this kind of stuff, but let's put this priority up front where it belongs. And that's to say we're taking a step forward, we're getting to 13 million, we put a waiver in to ease off the 44 million, the blueprint requirements. They're going to come back and agree with us because they're really smart down there, and they're going to say, boy, Carroll County, you got it right. I'm trying not to be sarcastic about that, but I'm more hopeful. But also, you and your leadership and your team are going to pause the issues that we have lined up in front of us. because we know those are some significant and emotional issues for families, especially down in the Eldersburg area when we're talking class sizes that are breaking down the doors. So, yeah, that's what I would like to do. I'd like to have a conversation amongst us, but I would like to, before we're done, move to $13 million in operational dollars. So, any thoughts on this?
Commissioners, any other discussion or questions?
I don't know if it's a question, but I think we've done a very good job the last several years interacting in good faith with the public school system. I mean, there's not been a year yet that this board hasn't been in that we haven't looked at that first. That was my point day one when we came in here. I know there was a couple years back where the school system pleaded in front of a public meeting begging for $1 million, and I thought that was incredibly unfortunate at that time with that board, given that our teachers and children are where is a mainstay of our community. So I don't think it's a debate or a question about whether we're serious about education. I think we need to have faith more so than hope when it comes to how we're hoping how this should move forward in regards to the potential waiver at this point. Just my thoughts this morning.
Any other discussion? And I'll discuss, if that's okay. Are you willing to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion that we increase the operational dollars to $13 million to CCPS.
Do I have a second? I'll
Second.
You did?
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second, and just to clarify, to make sure I understand, in the proposed budget for fiscal year '26, there was an additional 7.2 million, about 3%. And your motion is to add 6 million to that to make it 13.
Correct.
Correct? And,
Well, those can't both be true.
say again?
What's
They
that?
can't both be true. Either we're adding 6 million or we're getting to 13.
We're getting to
Yeah,
13.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
would be 5.8 million.
That's correct, yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And I'd just like to comment a little bit. I've been very vocal since Kerwin was a commission on the lack of understanding they had of finance. And I've probably been critical different times of AIB and MSDE. But I would like to thank Rachel Heiss, AIB, MSDE, Stonko, who's worked very hard on this, you guys who have met and gotten us to this point. And I know a lot of the discussions in Annapolis included the question of, are the Carroll County Commissioners going to help this cause? And I think with this motion, we're helping. You guys are giving up some things you'd rather not, and hopefully the state's gonna kick in and do a waiver. I do have to mention, there's been so much misunderstanding, and some of the board members are here, to make a motion that the budget increased by almost 25% when the county doesn't have the money. That would be, I forget, I calculated, a 19 or 20% increase in property taxes.
22%.
22,
Ted had
okay.
numbers done up to
Okay.
2%.
Yeah,
If you're,
so,
if you're paying
Overall bills.
$4,500 in property taxes a year, you will be paying $5,700.
Yes.
It's a $1,200 increase.
yes, it caused a lack of understanding of one-time money, operating fund, capital fund. I mean, we're hearing we shouldn't buy a vehicle with one-time money because of helping students. The fact that I made the statement that the Board of Education's motion was fiscally irresponsible, meant that I hated kids, which I've proven through my life I do. You know, it's unfortunate, and I wish it would have been handled a little better with a little bit more communication. And nicely put, I would hope the people that made the motion will do some study into how a budget works and better learn what's realistic and what isn't. And, but I do want to thank our delegation, Stonko, AIB and MSDE, and you guys, as Haven would say, he's gone now. You've been to Annapolis probably a little bit more than you'd like to, but it's a lot of work has led us to this point, and hopefully it reaches a good solution.
And also, our community who, you know, did, you know, I haven't used the words listen, learn, lead in quite some time, but, you know, for us to have the ability to listen to the community, learn from them on the priorities, and then lead together with them is a really strong statement, because the community led through both passion, but pen to paper and action in getting down to Annapolis, coming to the town halls, you know, getting and staying engaged. But it definitely was us having the ability to listen to the community, learn from them, and then lead together with them to making this next step. And I do believe this is the right step to make. So, okay.
So I guess like my first thought is that I guess maybe a point of order. Are we able to take votes in agency budget hearings about the budget?
That's a good question.
Sure.
Sure.
Because I don't remember doing it in previous years, and if that's the case, I mean,
Well,
you know, should we?
All your votes until you adopt your budget are changeable.
Yes.
So we always
Yes.
refer to them as sort of like placeholders.
Yeah, that's the-
So I think that, you know, that changes it a little. It's different from, you know, if they were trying to buy a truck and you were making a
We're
final
not making a
decision.
law.
That's important.
And
That's
as
an
far as the
important point.
timing,
Yeah.
It's a huge point.
Yeah, that's an important point
I
to make.
think we'd be very foolish to not state where we think we are with this prior to the April 1st application. A lot of people
Yeah.
are watching what we do with this budget and what we're kicking in. And yes, it's fine. I mean, we're in an open session. We can make a motion and vote on it.
I'm just making sure because, as some up here have mentioned in the past, bringing up sudden motions without any pre-considered discussion or some kind of notification that we wanted to vote on something, right, was not considered practical or in accordance with how we conduct our open sessions. In fact, some of us were very roundly criticized for bringing up motions at the sudden during our open sessions. So I just want to make that point very clearly.
There are times where it could be a notice issue, which could lead to open meeting, but this is well known that you're in the middle of, or you're in the beginning stages of discussing your budget, and since they are sort of all nothing's decided until after the public hearing and final budget adoption.
Yeah.
I think you're.
And we're specifically talking about CCPS operational budget.
It was
So,
on the public agenda.
I take the point, several weeks ago, we were discussing whether or not a lease was legal or not, and whether we might overturn that or not. And we were told at the time that bringing up a sudden motion without prior knowledge or information to the public about it was not germane to the meeting at the time. So I do want to make that point, that I'm not convinced that the motion today is in keeping with how we conduct ourselves, but that's one thing. The other thing I want to.
And
Yes.
early on, I did a solar motion that started us with solar on ag.
Yes.
In the exact same matter, so.
And I Commissioner,
If anything, our consistency has been inconsistent. but-
and that's a fair point, Commissioner, but it's worth bringing up anyways.
No, I respect
Right.
what you
Okay.
bringing it up.
And the other thing I do want to bring up, my colleagues up here, and I certainly understand where the three of you are coming from about trying to demonstrate that we've done something to the state. I want to remind everybody that this is a very, very conservative county. And last year, three of us voted to increase the recordation tax, which hadn't been done in years. And we did that in a measure to help fund the schools last year. That should not be forgotten. Secondly, we did that to help double the additional commitment above the maintenance of effort that we had last year in order to help fund the schools, in order to get ahead of Blueprint, and that's what we did with funding for the current fiscal year. The other thing that I think needs to be pointed out for anybody who's listening is that by Blueprint's own metrics, we are already spending more than we should be spending according to those metrics. Now, obviously, the formula and what people think Blueprint is going to cost is obviously not the reality of the situation, but according to their metrics, we are going above and beyond, and that also needs to be noted as well. And then the last thing that I'll bring up is that in the last 30 years, 27 of them were funded above the maintenance of effort for the schools, and the 3 that were not were funded at the level of maintenance of effort. We have never taken away money from schools in the last 30 years. And then when the state has withdrawn its funding, we have done our best to make up for the funding that the state has withdrawn based on the Thornton formula. I think by any measure, regardless as to where this motion seems to be going today, I think it needs to be said that this county has gone above and beyond to try to help fund our schools when the state has drawn funding back. And that's something else that I think that needs to be pointed out today as well, too. The way that things seem that they're going to go in Annapolis, state pension costs for teachers are going to be shifted on the counties and the community college for that matter. So between the two, that's $5.2 million less flexibility that we would have to give the schools if the state was not forcing us and commandeering that funding to pay for state teacher pensions. And that's incredibly unfortunate that they're taking away our freedom and our ability to choose how to use the funds that we have. But I think that all of those things were very important to bring up in a discussion about what we've done for the schools as it pertains to supporting the schools and trying to get a waiver on April 1st.
Just a couple of things. Well, couple quick things. One is, how much money did the recordation tax bring last year?
Last year, or are you looking at this year?
Okay, this year.
Yes, sure.
We're thinking it'll be about $18 million.
Okay. The difference between the adjustment we made from last year to this year.
I don't remember exactly, but it was in the vicinity of $4 million.
Okay.
How much? I'm sorry.
4 million.
4 million.
Okay, 4 million.
Okay. We made a decision on recordation, I won't say being the easiest of the 3, but the least challenging of the 3. And we need to make consideration on the authorities we have regarding other revenue streams. Now, not saying we will do that, but just like the state's attorney said, if the community knows that we're focused on the priorities that, we lay in front of them, safety, security, schools, quality of life, they're going to be more apt to say, yes, we understand. And you're right, we have provided the schools regarding MOE, but, you shared that we've done enough, and I'm like, we haven't come close to doing enough to the schools. And even though we didn't make the bed or make this environment we're living in, this is what we're put in. And we got to come up with a solution to a problem that has outside influences. In order to do that, and I believe in order to lessen the impact of those outside influences by us taking a step forward and showing this type of leadership and what, the superintendent and her team have done to date, sends a clear message to Annapolis and to our delegation to give them tools necessary to fight for the impact that by doing this waiver for the blueprint. And I don't think, I feel like we've unfortunately been short of, the numbers. I mean, this is not new news. And I remember the first town hall 4 years ago, and we knew we were gonna be in this position. And now we are, and now we gotta act on it, so. I understand your issues, I believe, and I think that if we make this statement and we make it strong and we make it vocal and loud, and those in Annapolis are listening, then, you know, things are going to go our ways. So, and I think we need to step up and do that, so.
So,
And I wanted to piggyback your comments
I'm sorry.
also. Thank you for what you brought up, and again, this has been unfortunate how this has gone. A lot of the people passionate about this have said raise taxes, but they had no idea the extent it would have to be. A lot of people said use one-time money. They have no idea what MOE means, evidently. And the talking point that we've underfunded the schools. That is such misinformation and such a disingenuous talking point. It just shows. And again, I complimented you guys once, and I was across the street, but I'm over here now. I understand that. But you guys have been fighting Blueprint since you heard about it. Unfortunately, a lot of the people in Carroll County heard about it this year. And I don't know what they've been, you know, we get emails, why haven't you fought this? Well, I think we have. So I think your points were valid. You know, we haven't underfunded the schools. And Commissioner Rothstein, like you said, you can always try to do more, but I think when CCPS went through declining enrollment, the state cut the money. The commissioners could have made a case to do the same thing, but instead of that, they tried to make up for it a little bit. And like Blueprint, we can't make up for all of it, but we're trying. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that about your comments. I appreciate them because
I appreciate
I think
that.
they need to be heard.
I appreciate that.
so again, I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Vigliotti, and I mean, there was a reference to the solar, which we discussed amongst ourselves prior to that, and that wasn't a motion about spending revenue or spending money, so I think it's a little bit of apples and oranges there. But to bring the discussion back to CCPS, the 7.2 is in the budget, and the above MOE is actually in the budget. So I can only speak for myself, but I don't think there was any hesitation there to agree to that. So I think that's where the stake is in the ground, you know, so to speak, for CCPS. I mean, that money is needed, and I would anticipate that obviously being approved regardless. Amazing work by the delegation. But I do think it's important that people understand that whatever we decide to vote on today, it's only day, you know, really week 2 of the budget discussions, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on the budget. There's a lot of people who are going to be coming in and asking for funds. So no matter what we do today, it's just important for people to recognize that, yeah, as was mentioned earlier, the budget process is just starting. But I think it's important to recognize that, at least for me personally, and I think for my colleagues, that MOE request above MOE, the 7.2, was, I don't think, much in doubt. It's the additional funds, but in light of what you told us this morning, that's certainly encouraging. So just want to make sure people understand that who are watching, that we're just getting started.
Mr. Gordon?
Well, Commissioner Vigliotti, if you could correct this, I don't think I heard you say this, but I don't recall you saying we've funded education enough when you were going through the examples you gave. I don't think that was a statement you made, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't believe I said we funded them, I think we said we've gone above and beyond.
Above and beyond is what I took that to be.
Yep.
And I think here's, you know, the reality is all 5 of us believe in education. Some of us up here are products of the Carroll County Public School System, and I can't say enough good things about the school system. I do think you make a valid point, though, regarding motions being brought up, but, you know, the one thing this board's been is inconsistently consistent, which has been entertaining and quite trying at times, but that's the role we all took. And, you know, as Commissioner Guerin just said, it's a working budget. Nothing's final to the final vote. So I think that's one thing I hope the public truly does acknowledge and notice and keep that in mind. But I do have to say, you know, we've got to be a little more fiscally aware, I guess is the polite way I'll put it. 7 years ago, we tore down a school, and we replaced it with a community rec center. They were in here the other week, and per their own information, they've had roughly 700 and some users of that in the past year, which if we divide that by the amount of money spent, it's roughly $10,000 per user. I think we need to take a hard look at our own budget and make decisions. I realize that's a past board, but past boards affect this board, whether it's one-time money or not. And those situations are affecting everything else we do as we move forward. You know, so we have to be looking a little more cognitively at how we're spending our funding. The other thing I'll say is we live in challenging times. You brought that up. I mean, we've got questionable things going on the federal level. We don't know how that spills down to the state. Then the state, of course, is pushing down things to us, such as the $5 million in unfunded school pensions. I don't think this is anything that's going to go away anytime soon. We're obviously seeing and hearing from local nonprofits that are not getting earmarks that they were in the queue to get this year. They're being told to refile for next year, so we don't know where that's going to put things. I think we need to be very cognizant and aware of where we're living. The talk of possibly raising property taxes, there was a federal study recently, 60% of the population in our country can't afford a $300,000 house. Now, granted, that's the whole country, and we know Carroll County has enough challenges with housing, but that affects our teachers too. Where do the teachers live? We're constantly having those conversations. I've had those with a variety of people, be it them, fire, EMS, whatever. I do think, getting back, as this all does dovetail together, I do think that, you know, education's important. I do think we need to fund it. That being said, to your point about making motions, there's any motion that any of us can make. If myself or you or any of us want to make a motion through any of these work sessions, we obviously have that ability to bring it up. Now, whether it survives to the final day, that's anybody's question. But I do hear where you're coming from, and I do completely understand what you're saying.
Well, thank you very much.
Any more discussion, questions?
I'm good, but thank you very much.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No?
No.
Okay, 3-2, pass. Any questions or comments or,
I would just say thank you for your continued collaboration and for your willingness to step up and help us in a time of crisis. This truly is a crisis. It's affecting our students, our staff, our parents, our entire community. So your support is greatly appreciated.
keep fighting.
I appreciate the comments. And the one thing I think we've all got to keep in mind, and I know sometimes it gets out of place because of big numbers and emotions, I hate to use the word, but the children are our clients. They're the people we need to be looking out for. So whether, you know, and unfortunately, you know, the potential loss of teachers. I mean, we've had, you know, great opportunity the last couple of years working towards salaries and such. So we've got to be keeping that in mind as well. And to me, we need to be working together. I said this, I think, 2 weeks ago in Priority Carroll. Carroll County works best when it works together. So instead of people taking these us versus them attitudes, people need to come to the table, be it other elected or whoever. Let's work together, because that's the only way we get things done, whether it's power lines or it's budgets. So that would be the only thing I would say. Thank you to you, but also to anyone else out there. Let's work together. Enough of the nonsense, because that's not going to accomplish anything for anybody. But I appreciate all your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, Human Services Program.
Just trust me. Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you today?
So good news is I am not going to be asking for 13 million. Not so good news is I am here with an ask. So essentially, so thank you for letting us come in and have these conversations. We are experiencing as a country an increase in homeless individuals. And a lot of it comes down to, as Commissioner Gordon, you had just referred to, housing, lack of housing stock, expenses. Inflation has obviously made it more expensive for every American to live. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is an increase in homelessness, not only in America, but in Carroll County. For example, we've usually averaged around 330-some individuals in our shelters for a year. Last year, we had 430. And specifically in there, 326 of those individuals went to our night-by-night shelter. So the county funds HSP for our homeless services in the county. So we operate the family shelter, we operate the adult-only shelter, and the night-by-night shelter. In addition to that, there's also housing, there's coordinated entry, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, prevention, eviction assistance, things like that. The night-by-night shelter has a capacity. Essentially, we have a capacity of 42 individuals in our night-by-night shelter. Last year, we had an average of 36 individuals every night. As far as 3 years ago, the average was 22. This year, we've already had 50-plus nights of 50 or more individuals. So we're operating above capacity at a frequent duration. And that doesn't also include the roughly 30 individuals that are out in encampments. And our goal is to have, we don't sponsor or endorse encampments. Our goal would be that no one's sleeping in the woods, because we've created a system where you don't have to. But as the numbers have grown, I'm here today to request an additional $60,000 in support in the county allocation, which will allow us to operate a overflow operation across the street from the night-by-night shelter at the Westminster Senior Center. And what I'm specifically asking for is that $60,000 would fund roughly 3,000 hours for a overnight staff member to be with the individuals that are across the street from our traditional night-by-night shelter. The fear is if we do not operate this, we are gonna start turning people away, and what that's gonna equal is more individuals sleeping in people's sheds, more individuals sleeping in the parking garages and such, and that's just not good for anybody. It's not good for the individuals that are doing it. It's also not good for the individuals that own those sheds or those business owners. So the request really is a safety request so that we can ensure that as the numbers do continue to grow, which we know they will, we're going to have a plan in order to meet that need so that individuals aren't sleep in places they shouldn't be and encroaching on the community at large, but then also not getting the services they need as well to get out of homelessness.
Just out of curiosity, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, if we had them at the senior center, where would they be housed within the senior center?
There is a great room. So we would roughly utilize the senior center from maybe 10 a.m. to 7 a.m., and they would sleep on mats.
So you're saying from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.?
Excuse me,
I'm
10
sorry,
p.m.
10 p.m. to 7 a.m., okay.
Exactly, yep.
And then I assume that would then be turned over and that would be used as the typical function it
Exactly.
is
We
now
would
as
be out of the
seniors.
way. We would have an MOU with Citizen Services and the senior centers that we would clean up after ourselves. We'd be in a situation where we would have the ability to move everything over with the individuals and then move it back over in the morning so that it doesn't impede on those operations.
Where would you house any of I assume beds or cots or whatever, where would you house those in the daytime?
So we have them over at the night-by-night shelter is not open during the day. So essentially, it's a staging area.
So you'd move it back across the
You got
parking
it.
lot, so to
You
speak?
got it. Mm-hmm.
What are the hours of the night-to-night shelter?
The night-by-night shelter is 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 8 a.m. Every day. We do open early, depending on what's going on with the weather. It does operate as a day center when we have inclement weather conditions. The HERC plan, which is the hazardous weather plan through emergency services, we participate in. So if it gets too cold or too hot, we do open it during the day for individuals that shouldn't be out in the elements.
Is there a set policy or temperature when it comes to the night? Because I can tell you, I've been over there a few times late in the winter, and it's cold out. It's
There
very
is.
cold out, and I don't know what that policy is, but to me, if we're looking to help people in our community stay warm, the last thing I want to see them doing is standing around 20 deep in a parking lot at you know,
You got it.
6 o'clock at night.
There is, and I gotta tell you, it's a chart that I can't tell you what it means because it has a bunch of different colors, and it has essentially levels of what triggers the HERC plan. And when those levels are triggered, essentially there is a communication that's gonna happen between HSP, between Celine Steckel and Citizen Services, the Health Department, and other providers to make sure that we're acting appropriately with the weather.
Thank you.
And part of your question was the time. So if it's 10 PM in the great room, but 7 PM typically, do you have room to stage them? A lot of community groups use that great room in the evenings, and 10 PM is pretty good. 7 PM would disrupt many of the meetings.
Well, the issue is standing versus sleeping. So the capacity for the shelter is 133 individuals as far as fire code goes. But that changes when people lay down. So essentially, we have enough space to be able to feed everyone dinner. We work with a ton, every night we provide a dinner, and that dinner is provided for free from various different groups. So individuals come in, they check in, they will meet with a case manager. They might be brand new, and they're going to be doing paperwork because we have to document who's there and how we can help them. But then also, once the meal is served, we have showers, we have laundry. Some individuals need new clothes, so we receive a ton of in-kind donations so that we can park through and let them get rid of their old discarded clothing and get new. So we have time and space for all that. It's just once we have to lay down, we're getting to the point where if we have to start putting cots into the walkways and things like that, it's going to be a fire hazard.
Yeah, yeah. So the timing, it's well thought out, so thanks.
And just to be clear for my segment, $60,000, not just this year, but ongoing.
Yes. So we're actually asking for the 2% increase, which the budget office has recommended, but we're asking that, in addition to that, an additional $60,000 for the 3,000 staffing hours to cover the overnight supervision.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you. Good
very
luck to
much.
you all.
Department of Recreation and Parks.
Mr. Zaleski, while we're in between speakers, a general question for you. I'll make it quick. Our governmental partners, library, et cetera, when they have unfilled positions throughout the year, that money, is that monitored here at the county level and returned to general fund, or does that stay within their budget for them to use as they see fit? What's the disposition of those dollars when positions with our governmental partners remains unfilled?
Okay, two different answers. If you're looking at circuit court, state's attorney, sheriff, they're on our payroll. So yes, we see that. That's part of our budget. If there's an open position, there's money unspent, that ends up in your fund balance. Library, community college, school system, nonprofit, they are not on our payroll. That money isn't in our budget. That's theirs. If money goes unspent, that remains in their hands.
Okay, thank you.
Except for the state's attorney does usually use their unspent money to, I'm not saying it well, you know where I'm going.
Right, with the state's attorney and the circuit court, if they have unspent money related to positions, they have used that to give increases to their employees.
Okay, thanks.
Now, Carroll County Public School, if they switch money between categories, ultimately, we see that. Some of it we approve, correct?
If money's going to move between categories, you have to approve it.
Okay. And for them to use their fund balance, we have to approve?
Yes.
Okay.
And for the library and the community college, both also, right?
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Good morning.
We're here, Recreation Parks is here before you this morning to request funding for air conditioning to be installed in the 5 cabins at the Hashua Educational Center. I have with me Brad Rogers, who's our Bureau Chief for Parks, and Dawn Harry, who's our Superintendent for Hashua and Bear Branch. They're going to kind of tell you about the importance of the issues and answer any questions that one might have.
Morning. Hoshawa Environmental Appreciation Center has been, as everyone knows, the host for the Carroll County Outdoor School. That's our primary user of this facility. In addition to that, we also host many other nonprofits that come out and utilize our facility for their retreats. We have groups that vary from church groups doing their ministry retreats, or we have the Y 4-H. We have many other groups that come out and utilize that facility, and they're utilizing it when an outdoor school is not in session. So we're running on the weekends, we're running through the summer, and some of these groups are fairly large. What we're looking for here is to air condition our 5 residential cabins that we have. They are dormitory style bunk rooms. They are not a camping cabin, which means that the climate within the cabin, it does get very hot and humid in the summers. The other issue is that since we rent this facility to other agencies, there are a number of options that they have out there to choose from. And within the surrounding areas, the other facilities similar to ours, all of their residential sleeping facilities are air conditioned. Lately, for many years, we've known this to be true, that there are some groups that come out to our facility and some of their group patrons do not stay the night because it gets too hot in the cabins. It's uncomfortable for them to be there, and there's also a lot of health-related issues to that. With many of the groups that we have that come out there, we have asthma and allergies and all the other respiratory type illnesses that we're seeing within the schools as well as within these groups, where it makes it difficult for these people to spend the night in these areas. Also, with the heat index air quality, there are significant numbers of days through the summer where we are above a level, or a safe level, for individuals with compromised respiratory illnesses. So by providing this gives them a place where they could get out of the heat and get some respite from the heat and humidity so that they can continue with their activities that are planned with their group that come out to the facility. And also, as we've all seen in the news, there are things that are happening within OSHA and MOSHA, and there are heat-related injuries as well as fatalities that happen from not being able to provide adequate cooling for individuals. Right now, we do not have any place for a group of 150 people that are participating in any of our activities out at Hoshawa where the whole group could go and get out of the heat for any extended period of time. So these are some of the things that we're asking for so that we can provide a better quality environment for our patrons that are utilizing the facility. Dawn, do you have anything else to add?
The only thing to add is in the summertime, when we would be using the air conditioning, indoor air quality is a lot of times worse than the outdoor air quality. So when you have folks that are, they've had a full day enjoying the park, and then they want to come in and get some rest, they're not getting the rest that they need. So older folks or folks that do have respiratory issues, or kids, if they're not used to sleeping in, 80-degree cabins, they're not getting the rest that they need. It makes them more susceptible to a heat-related illness when they're outside enjoying the day. And the other thing is it just is not leading to an overall great camp experience. So it's hot, tired. It leads to kids calling home and homesickness and, folks not wanting, when we are talking about church groups or adult groups, they're going to look at other facilities where the overall experience is enjoyable.
And the majority of this is one-time costs, and you've got a good explanation for the split. But what's the lifespan of these units. Sooner or later, you're going to have to replace them, but is that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
I don't know for sure, but my guess would be, just by judging with some of the other HVAC units that we do have at Hoswa, we're looking 10-plus years for lifespan, as long as they're properly maintained. I mean, we have a unit that was put in when I started 20 years ago that has not been replaced yet. So, you know, I don't know an exact lifespan of these, but, you know, there is one that I know of for sure that was put in my second year, and I'm working on 25.
Good budget question, though, Commissioner.
I don't know if you can answer this today. What's the level of, I guess I'd say, revenue for these groups renting out those cabins? I mean, I know the school system is using it for outdoor school. How much, I mean, what's the level of revenue the county's taking in for these rentals? And if you can't answer today, I mean, if you could send us all the information, that's fine, I understand.
We have the information. I don't
Okay.
know it, but we can bring it along.
Okay, I'd like to see that.
Okay.
Commissioners, anything else? Nope. Thank you.
We do have some handouts we'd like to give you as well, so if that's all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Fire and EMS.
Good morning, Chief.
Morning, Commissioners.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I've got just a few slides, if Chris could get those up.
Go to PowerPoint down the bottom.
It's sitting there waiting for you.
Yeah, go to PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, these got them on there.
Yeah.
Yep, there we go.
And then just, yeah, you got it.
Okay. So we're here for the agency hearings, and we have one specific issue. We're requesting a third ambulance to be included in the FY26 operating budget. 3 were initially requested, only 2 are being recommended, and the cost that we're going to present today includes the purchase of the ambulance unit itself and the equipment necessary for the ambulance to be functional. That includes what we call a power load stretcher system, the new generation cardiac monitor, a stair chair, a Lucas automatic CPR device, and a service and maintenance plan. So the Department of Fire and EMS had originally requested 3 medic units for the FY26 operating budget, and this has been changed to only 2 units. DFEMS operationally currently operates 16 ambulance medic units on a daily basis deployed from 13 stations. So 3 of the stations actually respond to medic units due to their call volume. And these are all on a 24/7 basis. Beginning in FY25, we appreciate your efforts, and we began a fleet development management plan to transition the volunteer fire company-owned EMS fleet to a county-owned fleet. This had originally included the procurement of 3 medics annually, and in FY25, through the utilization of available EMS billing funds, we were able to jumpstart the process with the procurement of 6 total units, and 5 of those are currently in service. So DFEMS currently has a total of 8 first-line ambulances in service, and this leaves 8 additional units that are owned by the volunteer fire companies. So looking at the rate of just 2 units beginning in FY26 and a current production time of 24 to 36 months, this is going to place the DFEMS fleet in a position in about 2 years where the cost of the remaining volunteer units may exceed current replacement costs. Many of the volunteer units are going to require replacement sooner, and this change to that is going to slow our process. So again, we require 16 daily units and then taking 25% of the total fleet size of 16, we come up with 4 additional reserve units. Right now, the county owns only 1 reserve unit. CC Visa has 2 units that are on their last leg. So today, we have no reserve units available. And what's happened is Pleasant Valley has a unit that they had purchased brand new. That's now at the factory. They're evaluating whether or not that's totaled, so that could complicate our fleet even more. So right now, if someone breaks an ambulance today, I'll have to make the decision of what station in Carroll County will not have an ambulance for an undetermined period of time. So currently, we have the 8 units. We require the 12 additional. We have 8 units remaining in the volunteer fleet that by the time that we receive the first of 2 units, they will be greater than 10 years old. Looking at the Commission on the Accreditation of Ambulance Service and the MIMS, the state recommendations, they look at a 7-year lifespan or anything greater than 150,000 miles as being recommended for replacement. So essentially, with 2 units a year, we're looking at 2.5 to 3 years for delivery, and that means 6 years to realize our goal of 20. So with the planned obsolescence and the turnover of the current units, we're not going to be able to realize that. That's going to put us in a near catastrophic position just 3 years from now. At 3 units per year, which is our recommendation beginning with this year, it will take us 4 years to realize our goal of 20 replacement units. So in terms of cost analysis, the total cost of just the ambulance unit for this year is about $414,559, and that's based on the current 3 bids that we've received that are good until July the 1st. Total cost of 3 units, just the units themselves, roughly $1.2 million for FY26. Add the EMS equipment to 3 units at $557,325. That would be a total requested this year, understanding that 2 of those units in the equipment are already in the current operating budget. So the total request would be approximately $1.8 million for FY26. Using just 2 units and their equipment, that would limit it to $1.2 million, and so the difference that we're requesting today for your consideration would be about $600,334 additional. So that would include the 1 additional unit as well as the required equipment. Some things that we want to look at, and I've talked to the current vendors that we're using and the people that would be bidding these, is the industry inflation rate among both medical equipment and ambulance manufacturers is about 5 to 7% annually. So the impact in FY27 would be with 3 units, 126,000 increase, or we just go with the 2 units, that would mean that next year an additional 84,000 increase in addition to the 1.2 million. What is unknown is the impact of proposed and current tariffs being imposed at the federal level. So something to note is that we use Ford chassis, and the primary components of Ford trucks are manufactured in factories in both Canada and Mexico. So there could be an untold consequence that could go beyond that. Cost of maintaining the current fleet, which includes currently 15 volunteer-owned units, we're required under our current memorandum of understanding with CC Visa to maintain those units. Case in point, under the MOU, we just replaced a motor in one of the ambulances at the cost of $38,000. The oldest of our reserve fleet, assuming delivery in 2008 at the earliest, we would have 1 reserve unit that would be 20 years old. So that becomes a big issue. The other part of our total plan is there's currently 5 additional units in addition to the 8 primary within the volunteer companies that we do not plan to replace. So those will ultimately go away when our fleet is complete, or the burden would be on the volunteer companies if they wish those additional units to be replaced. So ultimately, we're looking at a level of efficiency with our complete county-owned fleet that we believe will assure cost effectiveness. The other thing we're looking at, working with our fleet management, is a plan to rotate these units. For example, the unit at Union Bridge is not going to be as busy as the unit at Westminster. So once we have the total fleet there, we're going to be looking at a regular analysis, looking at mileage, hours, and repair costs. So without adding the 3rd unit this year, we believe we're going to have an ongoing systemic failure of our current fleet with 8 additional units that we still have to replace. And we believe that the long-term costs, because of dropping just 1 unit off, could exceed what the replacement cost would be in terms of overall efficiency, adding a 3rd unit this year. So with that, any questions?
Yeah, on the back of the, Chief, on the back of the hearing paper that we have, I note that there's a column of one-time costs and then total costs. So for FY26, you're requesting the $600,000 for the additional ambulance and the upfitting. But then in 27 and beyond, the number continues to repeat. Is that because you want to replace an ambulance every single year?
Yes, so currently, if you look at the budget, operational budget requests, and Ted can certainly jump in on this, is the recommendation is 2 per year. So our assumption is that the operational budget would recommend that annually. So we're going to recommend 3 units for this year, and then beyond that, that's something that'll have to be addressed in subsequent operational budgets.
Okay, so you're not, so what you're requesting today really is a one-time cost for these ambulances, and then this one ambulance, and then next year you will come back to talk about other ambulances.
Correct. And
Okay.
we'll see where we are in terms of delivery time now. We're going to be, if and when it's approved, we're going to be working with procurement, and a lot of the manufacturers, including the ones that we use, have been stockpiling chassis. So there may be some additional efficiencies that we could realize that after this year, we could possibly go back to a 2-year cycle. But for right now, because of where we are with a total of 8 and our abysmal reserve fleet, we're requesting that additional unit for this year.
Makes sense. Thank you very much.
And so, the reason it keeps going is then it will be replacement vehicles.
Yes. So ultimately, when we reach our threshold of 20 units, and it is important that we stagger them, because if you buy them all at once, then you have the same problem,
Yep.
7 years down the road. So that's just not a good business practice. So we believe that in staggering it, we'll ultimately realize the total of 20, which would include increasing the reserve fleet by 1 to a total of 4 reserves. So again, with the fleet management process, we'd be in a constant rotation to gain the total efficiency, because the units will all be identical in terms of equipment and supply inventory. And now that we're going to be up to our 220 employees, it won't matter who's on that ambulance, they'll all be the same. Right now, with 13 different fire companies having procured ambulances, we've got them 13 different ways, staffed 13 different ways. So working with our EMS division and Dr. Kemp, we've decided what is the most efficient inventory to have that will meet the needs for EMS.
So, 2 questions, and I'll ask them both because they're related. 16 units with 13 locations, so some have 2. I'm curious who has 2.
Yes, so,
And then also, out in industry, nobody could afford to have 25% reserve setting. Is that an industry standard, or how do you come up with?
we looked at other jurisdictions and what they're doing. Most of them have a greater number of that. So we have a couple of problems. Typically, in the first year, they're under warranty. So when we need warranty work, they have to go back to the local dealers. That's 3 to 4 days at a time. So if we're bringing 3 in, what it does is it gives us a reserve for normal wear and tear, and it gives us the potential during the warranty period, which for incrementally, if we're buying 2 or 3 units, that warranty is going to kick in. So right now, that's become problematic because we bought 5 of them last year. So this would cover that. The other thing is we've had a large percentage of accidents, which is probably tied into we're hiring a lot of younger employees, and in today's world, a lot of them don't have the driving experience that our generation probably did with driving larger vehicles. So we've seen an inordinate number of accidents, which we're addressing through training and accident review. But just because of that, we have that need for those reserves.
And so 3 of the stations have 2?
Yes, so that's Mount Airy, Sykesville, and Westminster, and that's due to their call volume. And many times during the day, all 3 of those stations, both of their units are out, and we're calling in further distant units.
Questions?
Yeah, it's important to put this in context because, if I'm not mistaken, 80% of the calls that our stations are responding to are actually EMS calls.
Correct.
And only 20% are firefighting calls. So these are the vehicles that are getting a lot of usage.
And the other challenge that we're seeing right now with the systemic problems with healthcare, we had a situation just 2 weeks ago. We spent 7 hours at Carroll Hospital Center. So the big challenge is the turnover of these units. So in our high-frequency areas, the 3 stations I mentioned, it's important that we maintain those second ambulances. And the other part of it is Mount Airy, being partially in Frederick County, we have under our mutual aid agreement, and we're compensated somewhat by Frederick County, that we have first due response in the portion of Mount Airy that's actually in Frederick County.
Anything else? Thanks.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you,
Chief.
Chief.
CC Visa.
Good morning to both of you.
Morning. Good morning.
For those of you who don't know me, my name's Joe Dennis, and I chair the Budget Committee for CC Visa. You know Mary Carroll. We'd like to thank you for providing CC Visa and its member corporations the opportunity to discuss our FY 2026 budget request. In addition to the normal annual request, we'd like to provide 2 supplemental items for discussion, one of which we believe should be addressed in the current budget cycle. Regarding the normal annual request, our annual increase from one fiscal year to the next has continued to be capped at 3% as instructed by the County Budget Office. However, in light of the inflationary post-COVID economic effects, this has resulted in additional financial pressure on the volunteer corporations. Well, the DFEM's budget has absorbed some of the operational aspects of the volunteer corporations, such as insurance, fuel, and medical supplies. It continues to remain the corporation's burdens or responsibility to maintain their facilities, replace and upgrade their current equipment, such as breathing apparatus, in order to maintain compliance with national standards, and replace aging and obsolete apparatus and equipment.
Quick question for you. The SCBA, I thought we funded that.
We do.
So,
Well, we got a grant through CC Visa, Sykesville did,
I thought we just funded like $500,000 for SCBA.
for which company?
There were grants for a while. We began supplementing. I believe we're fully paying the cost of.
Yeah, so did I.
So- But not the repairs.
So we have a capital project that will replace Our
Correct.
objective is to take over all of the volunteer-owned breathing apparatus. I believe that comes about
Right.
in 2027.
7.
So
What-
they are currently doing some of the maintenance.
And we did purchase our SCBA with the assistance from CC Visa back in 2018.
Right, and that's my
20
point.
yeah.
This was a multi-year transition.
Right.
It's a
I'm
multi,
not saying it never happened, I'm just saying that's not where we are now.
Right.
right, so aging and obsolete apparatus. We believe that it's an unrealistic expectation that the volunteer corporations can continue to provide the services while being artificially constrained to a 3% cap, especially in light of maintaining our facilities and our capital assets being apparatus and the various equipment that we have for use of both the volunteer and the DFEMS employees. Our operating costs have not diminished simply because DFEMS is operating out of our facilities. They're operating out of there 24/7, 365. That's not the typical cycle for volunteers. Volunteers come and go. They come, they respond to the call, they leave. Our operating cost, according to Bankrate, prices today are 23% higher than what existed in February of 2020, pre-COVID. This equates to a compound annual growth rate during this 5-year period of 4.7%, which goes back to what the director said about the inflation for medical equipment and supplies of 5 to 7%. This 4.7 indicates that the volunteer corporations are incurring an increased portion or proportion of operating expenses. We understand that the initial funding of DFEMS was and remains a priority. That initial period is winding down as far as acquiring all the employees and the requisite equipment that's being requested. While their costs and inflation have been partially addressed, we believe that the operating and capital costs of the volunteer corporations deserve parity. We believe in the interest of partnership and transparency. Prospectively, the corporation should not be artificially constrained to 3%, but that their annual budget request should reflect and be considered by applying a 5-year rolling compound inflation rate. That does not fix the current year, but we would like consideration about that going forward, because we're incurring the same inflationary pressures that DFEMS is incurring. So in the interest of fairness and parity, we believe that should be a consideration.
I apologize. So just to make sure, the 250, the $250,000 that you have on the chart.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to go to. That's what I'm going to go to next.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that's one of the supplemental items that I'm mentioning, that I mentioned initially. First, as you're aware, there are numerous previous discussions that have occurred throughout the county, through other agencies, that the operating costs across the entire county, because of the infrastructure, continue to escalate due to inflation. That's just readily apparent. As mentioned above, the volunteer corporations are no exception to the inflationary pressures. These pressures are compounded with the increased wear and tear on the volunteer facilities. Things such as kitchen facilities are now being used constantly. Mattresses, volunteers typically don't sleep there every night. Primarily they sleep there during the weekends. But now we have staffs of 3 and 6 individuals there every day. Those mattresses have to be replaced. It's just the normal wear, the usage of things like office furniture, simple things, door closures, things of that nature, because the building is occupied 100% of the time. These inflationary pressures are compounded, like I said, with the increased wear and tear on the facilities and the fire apparatus through that 24/7, 365. The result of the constant and increased use of the facilities has resulted in an escalation of our facility and maintenance and repair to an extent that had not been incurred in the past. It has increased, respectively, incrementally. This manifests itself in greater financial commitment and burden on the volunteer corporations. Some of the corporations, due to the seasonality of their cash flow, their debt servicing requirements, or simply their financial condition, do not possess the liquid assets to maintain or repair the facilities on a prompt and continuous basis. Some of the items which need to be addressed affect the safety and well-being of not only the volunteer members, but the DFEMS employees. We believe it is necessary, and in the spirit and intention of the current MOU, that a funding mechanism or a grant fund be explicitly earmarked on a contingency basis to address these potentially large and unforeseen operating expenses. The funding mechanism would be controlled by, conceptually, the funding mechanism would be controlled by a committee composed of CCVSA members, DFEMS representation, an at-large community individual, and union representation. This would ensure that the funds would be distributed and would address the objective of the funds. This fund would need to be replenished annually to a level that takes into effect and account for the CPI growth based upon the previous year's balance, and to ensure that the fund keeps pace with the economic realities of annual inflation and the impact it has on the maintenance and repair costs of the facilities and the fleet. Some of these examples are motor and transmission repairs for major apparatus. Just as an FYI, if you have to replace the transmission in a pumper, it's going to cost you $80,000 to $100,000. Some of these companies don't have the liquid assets available to do that. Kitchen renovations, facility renovation due to DFEMS habitation and employee privacy concerns, HVAC units, it's climate control within the building. That's the item, Commissioner Vigliotti, that we're focusing on, the $250,000 additional request. It's a contingency fund that would be controlled through a committee, so that prudent, it would either be done under a grant basis or a loan basis. It would have to be determined at the committee level what they want to do. And it would be based upon the request of each individual company or corporation. The second supplemental item which we believe should be addressed is the support the county should be able to provide to assist the corporation in their acquisition costs of acquiring new major pieces of apparatus, things such as pumpers, ladder trucks, rescue squads, etc., or to construct facilities to house personnel and apparatus. Currently, the county provides loan funding for major apparatus and building construction. However, my understanding was, based upon the last CCVSA meeting, was that this is only provided at market-set rates. While the county does provide in the, typically market rates. While the county does provide in the volunteer annual budget allotment a provision for interest costs, this is capped at a maximum of $50,000 per company, with the average apparatus cost approaching $1.3 million for pumpers and $1.5 to $2 million for ladder trucks, and for facilities even more. The $50,000 cap seems to shift the proportion of acquisition costs due to interest cost on the loans more and more onto the volunteer corporations, without compensating those corporations for, bluntly, housing DFEMS employees and giving them volunteer apparatus to ride.
Let me interrupt for 1 second. I just want to explain a couple technical things here. First, when he's talking about a loan, I think you know this, but I want to make sure everybody's together. We issue bonds. It's not a loan from the county to a fire company. When we issue bonds, we sell them at whatever we can sell them at. We're not choosing an interest rate. The only way around that would be for the county to directly loan money
Right.
to a fire company and determine what that rate's going to be. And on the 50,000, historically, there was an amount allowed. County funding could be used as debt service, or so a fire company could pay you back for the bonds that you took. Years ago, we stopped dictating the budget process to Visa. Visa works through that with the companies on their own. I believe if Visa wants to say you can use 100,000 for debt service, that's in their hands to do.
And I, excuse me, I understand that, but the problem becomes is, with the 3% cap, I would have to shift more money over to the interest allotment, which then takes money away from the repair and maintenance and operating expenses that we need to cover.
I understand. I just didn't want to leave an
I'm just-
idea that we were dictating.
Right,
that 50,000.
I appreciate that. It's just, my point here is that it shifts more and more of the financial burden.
Yeah, we're very familiar with how that works. We all
So,
the time.
we believe that the county should explore, and this is not something that needs to be addressed in the current year for the current budget, but prospectively, that the county should begin to explore a mechanism to provide interest-free loans with a prudent underwriting process to the volunteer corporations as a form of compensating for housing employees of the county and providing fire and rescue apparatus for those employees to operate. We believe at this time it would be a fair and reasonable approach to share the responsibility of providing emergency services to the citizens of the county, and would fulfill the fiduciary responsibility of the county to best serve the citizens. I understand that, these are additional costs. We understand that. Last year, the budget allotment that was provided, or this year, budget allotment that was provided for interest was $228,000. Right now, we know that there are at least 6 companies right now that are purchasing major pieces of apparatus. Over a 10-year period, we know that $35 million will be not inflated, but will be required to replace aging apparatus. Aging apparatus can be classified basically because of the volume of activity, 15 to 20 years. Most pumpers in this county are held for 20 years. Most ladder trucks are held for 20 years. Some of them respond more often. I would cite Westminster as a large volume of calls, and they probably need to replace theirs more often. That's why we threw this proposal out here prospectively to look forward into the upcoming years as a facility of assisting or providing support to the volunteer companies who are willing to go out and raise the money to purchase this apparatus, but to get some support on the interest cost of that. So in conclusion, we'd like the commissioners to consider the first supplemental proposal for the funding of the contingency fund for FY 2026 for the $250,000. And I've already talked your ears off regarding the loan, the approach to the loan process prospectively. I'd like to thank you for your time. If you have any questions,
So just so I'm completely aware, the 3 points that you raised with us today, the first was with respect to compounding budgetary requirements to an increase in the overall budget at some point, the contingency fund of $250,000.
Correct.
And then also looking ahead to potentially creating some kind of system of interest-free loans for vehicles for the volunteer companies.
correct.
All right. And so my first question, just remind me, just because I've forgotten since last year, The funding that is given to Visa, how is that apportioned to all of the different companies? Is it by percentage? Is it by formula? Does it depend on needs of each company?
Currently, each company provides their own budget. We've told them that they need to keep it within 3%. We manage that process. They submit their budget. Then through working through a budget committee that we have in place, we make certain adjustments to bring the total overall budget to CC Visa to 3%. Some companies get more, some companies get less based upon their operational needs. A lot of that's driven by equipment, things such as hydraulic extrication tools, basically other rescue apparatus that we need, that they need based upon the age of certain things. Something as simple as airbags that are used for lifting. They have about a 10-year life. After that, they have to be replaced. Hose, basically 10 years. That's about it. Basic wear and tear, things of that nature.
Maintenance on the equipment goes up.
It goes up
as vehicles age.
As they age.
Okay.
It's gonna go up over time. Basically, some jurisdictions, the rule of thumb is when your total maintenance cost equals the cost of the apparatus, it's time to get rid of the apparatus. I don't think those type of records are maintained at the volunteer corporations level, but there is a sense of when things start to get more expensive, it's time to go. The other problem we have is getting replacement parts. The older the apparatus, think about something that's 20 years old, trying to fix a pump on a pumper, you're going to wait a long time for that. It's just the way the market's going right now. Currently, fire apparatus, there are 3 major manufacturers that have over 70% of that market cornered. They're all owned by hedge funds. So hedge funds are driven by profitability, and that's why we're seeing that, and the supply chain, that's why we're seeing that particular cost escalate.
So effectively, you have a flexible formula for budgeting.
Yes.
That
and-
will vary based on operational costs at each specific company.
Now, we are exploring something that's based on formulaic, based upon call volume, age of equipment, age of facilities. We're exploring that. I just came on board this year. That's one of the things that that we've been asked by CC Visa to look at. It won't always work in every category or in when I think about it, it can't be just based upon sheer volume of calls for each individual company.
All right, because some companies are more rural, they have harder roads they've got to deal with.
They have longer distances to travel, things of that nature. There are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration. We're going to go through that process this year. We're going to change our chart of accounts that we go through because we believe we need more detail as far as the budgets go. I've made the statement at CC Visa that sooner or later, I believe, the county will ask for greater accountability regarding where the funds go. That's my belief. It's happened to PG County, happened to Montgomery County. It's just a fact of life. Taxpayers' dollars, you're gonna wanna know where it goes. They've been told, so.
So with
Thank you.
that, yeah, I appreciate that. Good question. And segueing right into that, each company has a contingency fund, correct?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Do any of the companies have contingency funds?
No.
They have
We
their own independent
we
operations.
each independently owned companies. They have liquid assets, but let's be real clear. Don't just look at the liquid assets that reside on a company's balance sheet. You have to look at the liability side too. I'll give you an example. While Sykesville has a cash reserve, we also have over $3 million in debt. Now, some of that debt is at 1% because we've got loans through the Maryland State Firemen's Association. But some of these, that fund is now dried up. They can only lend $4 million this year. That's about the cost of roughly 3 pumpers.
That's the entire state.
That's for the entire state.
So who's capturing that cash reserve and that debt in the companies and consolidating it.
None of us.
None of us,
Why not?
it's not required. They're independent corporations.
I understand it's not required, but wouldn't it help us provide you money? I mean, you're looking for, ongoing dollars, but,
So let me.
so I don't understand why.
Let me ask you,
We-
let
we
me
had
ask
the
a
same
question to
question.
your question, if I
Okay.
may. So would you be looking for the other companies to provide that contingency fund based on, let's say, Company 12 had excess funds to lend it to Company 8? Is that what you're saying?
No. No, not at all.
He wants the financial position of all 14 companies.
I want the financial position of all 14 companies. Same question I asked last year.
All right, so if you can't just take the balance sheet. I'm a CPA by trade.
Okay, I'm not.
You can't just take,
Okay.
you can't just take the balance sheet. You have to look at the liquid assets.
So put it together. I don't disagree with you. Make it as, clear as possible, so we're not just looking at one thing, but you're providing what you believe are the categories to give us the best understanding of each company. And then we could say, this makes perfect sense. You're looking for this amount of money to their offset costs or to, provide.
Yes, it would be a contingency fund.
Yeah.
For the companies that don't have the affordability. The companies that do have the affordability, when they went through the underwriting process, I would not see that, those funds expended for that. Which gets to your point.
I'm just looking for accountability, like you
I understand.
ended off.
I understand.
Taxpayer money, how are we going to provide this money to CC Visa with an understanding of these are the needs within CC Visa? Same, I thought basic question I had last year, still never got a.
My apologies.
No, it's all good. It's just, it's difficult. There's 14 stations. How do all 14 stations, operate? What, obviously their priorities, but what is their, cash reserve? What's the debt that they have on hand? What are the things that we should be looking at, holding them accountable, and then saying, yes, we understand, and then here's X,
We can certainly pursue it.
I would really appreciate it. I think that would
We
help.
can certainly
a lot.
pursue it. I don't know if they'll readily give that information.
I
feel like we're mixing eggs and
understand.
wine.
Okay,
Yeah. I understand and
he's got
understand
an
the
objective, and I understand what his objective is, so.
I mean, there was one other alternative that we had discussed about the interest, and that was taking it outside the budget as a separate
Well,
kind of line item.
Right, we could do that. We could do
Which
that.
was,
But the
then it doesn't,
complexities, obviously, there's a lot of complexity to this, because we have the volunteer corporations and DFEMS. And we have, it's just a sense of, we're working as a team together.
Right.
Right? DFEMS's primary objective is the medical side. Volunteers are still providing the vast majority of the fire rescue side as far as manpower and the apparatus in order to combat the fires and execute rescue operations.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get to a point of, like I mentioned earlier, parity, a
Yep.
sense of sharing.
Yep.
That's what we're trying to get to. But in the meantime, we brought up the contingency fund because we're starting to hear a lot of
complaints.
companies that are coming back to us saying, well, what about this? What about that? Where do we cover this? Where do we cover that? And my answer to that is, well, next year, you put it in next year's budget, but if we're capped artificially or not based upon need, we really can't help
Right.
you. So,
I think a lot of what we're saying is the same. And, a lot of it has to do with accountability. A lot of it has to do with, just say, open up the kimono and say, hey, here's where it all is. And this is how we see ourselves, and here's our priorities. And, it's help us help you, but in order to do that, you gotta provide the numbers.
Got to meet halfway.
So, that's all.
I got you.
Okay. It was good.
Commissioners, any other questions, discussion? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Carroll County Public Library.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
As usual, we come bearing gifts.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Oh, that has my name on it, okay.
I would if I
Oh, they're
can.
named. I didn't know. Gosh.
Well,
I
in
got
your,
something to do.
Yeah. You,
in your bags are your summer reading T-shirts, which we always give to the commissioners.
thank you.
You're welcome. And there's also an information sheet that we'll get to in a moment, something like this. And there is a budget survival kit for you all.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We figured it might be helpful. So, good morning. I'm the Executive Director of the Carroll County Public Library, Andrea Bursler. I have with me at the table here Jill Edlin. Jill is the Financial Director, so if we have number questions, I can have her pull them up. We also have several members of the library staff with us today. Bob Kuntz, who's our Director of Operations Innovation, Joe Thompson, who's our Director of Public Service, and I have a couple of board members with me as well, Beth Gray, and somebody who you may recognize, Steve Wantz.
Possibly.
All right.
He's
So,
a little dressed up today.
he is dressed up today. First off, we have a presentation for you, and then, of course, I'm sure there's going to be some questions. So first, we want to say, let me make sure I get this right. First, we want to say thank you. Thank you to this community, to Carroll County government for your longstanding support of CCPL. Your investment has made CCPL a top library in the state and across the country, positively impacting our community through quality resources, programming, and services with dedicated staff and strong community partnerships. Because of this legacy of partnerships and cooperation, CCPL has had a very strong positive community impact. Library services, resources, and programs are in high demand. Exploration Commons program registrations, still here in year 3, fill within the first minute that they are open. Library programs not only welcome people into classes, but provide opportunity for them to interact and engage with their community. In the information we provided for you this morning, there are information sheets on each of our branches, including Exploration Commons, Westminster Branch, Tawnytown, North Carroll, et cetera. You can look up the branches in your respective districts. On the back are the stats for the library as a whole. In those stats, you will see that over 55% of those who live, work, and attend school in Carroll County have an active library card. That means that 96,485 people have interacted with this library in the last 18 months. CCPL is 5th in total circulation in the state, and it retains its place as the top circulation per capita in the state. On average, each person in the county would borrow 16 items, or about 32 items per cardholder. Our total items loaned over the fiscal 24 cycle was 2.9 million items. Should probably pull that. 145,000 people attended CCL programs in fiscal 24. This includes 75,000 attendees at our daily story times, 1,300 students who participated in fiscal year 24 Battle of the Books, and over 4,000 attendees to our 47 author events, which is almost an author event a week. We were able to provide 1,800 hours of community service for our middle and high school students, processed 2,700 passports, and supported 42,000 computer sessions. And our technology infrastructure supported 71,000 Wi-Fi connections. Our overall success is made possible by the success we help individuals achieve. We work with parents, daycares, and childcare providers to help them prepare the children for kindergarten. In fact, CCPL provides more programs for children in the birth to 5 age group than Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Enoch Pratt, or Howard counties. All these systems are larger, with many more branches and a larger population. But as a responsive library system, CCPL has directed resources to providing these kinds of educational and early literacy programs because that is what our community wants us to do. We are not only able to provide, excel in our work, provide excellent work, but because of our partnerships and because of our dedicated staff that responds to the input of this community. These are great stats, and the library has a long-held reputation for providing excellent service. But what do we need to maintain this level of excellence? How do we provide for the library so we can keep this level of programs and service at a current status? We need 2 things. One, we need at least the funding found in the budget office's recommended budget. The $11,620,220 is not sufficient for us to grow any new programs or services. It will not provide funds for salary increases, but it will keep CCPL operating at this current level. Any decrease in this amount will require us to look at our services, resources, and programs to see what we will have to do without. Recognizing that this is a particularly trying budget cycle, we are not asking for additional funds this year, although I will tell you we won't turn them down. Another year of flat funding, however, or worse, a cut to our budget, would make continuing everything that we do currently impossible. Number 2, we need your help to get the library back on course financially. That would make, we ask that the county work with us to find a way to get the library back on a sustainable funding path. This slide shows our actual funding from fiscal year 2019 to fiscal 24. And then for 25, it shows the proposed level of $11,600,000. From fiscal year 26 to fiscal year 31, it then shows the library receiving 3%, as is in the county's operating budget currently. This slide compares, the next slide compares those figures with where the library would have been if we had continued to receive simply the 3% that was in the original operating budget. This is how far behind the library's funding will be as of fiscal 31, over $1.58 million. What we are asking is for the county to help us carve a path out like this. This slide shows the changes in our ask for a 5% increase in the operating budget in 27 and an 8% increase in the operating budget in 28. These 2 increases, followed by the continuance of the 3%, which is normally in the operating budget, puts the library at $14.4 million in fiscal 31, cutting the difference to about $900,000. It does not restore all the library's lost funding, but it goes a long way in providing what CCPL needs so that we can continue to provide innovative and services and the development of new services at a level that our community has asked for and continues to expect. In summary, thank you for your support. We simply would not be able to do what we do without the funding and in-kind support of Carroll County. We ask that you keep the recommended figure in this year's budget, allowing CCPL to maintain services and programs for this coming fiscal year. And we ask that you work with us to restore the lost funding that CCPL has experienced by providing these increases in fiscal 27 and 28 in the operating budget. The library's success is the success of this community and of the individuals who live, work, and attend school in Carroll. We are here to support them just as you are. Thank you.
So
I'm sorry.
the chart on the page
Yes.
is just reinforcing that you want the what's in the budget and proposed for this year.
For this year, yes, we do.
Yes.
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 Yes. But then it also shows why we are asking for additionally beyond the 3%.
Yes.
If we had been able to maintain that 3%, I mean, $1.5 million is a lot of money. and it's a lot of money for us. And it would make a lot of difference for our staff, significantly, as well as give us the money we need to pilot new programs, new initiatives, new services, upgrade electronic resources, and that sort of thing.
So in 27, 28, you're looking for the adjustments?
We are looking for, keep going, right there. In 27, our request is for fiscal 27, a 5% increase instead of the 3% increase.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I was going to get there, so.
Yes, no.
What's the dollar amount? The percentage is fine, but what's the dollar amount? Just so I have a more practical understanding of what it is.
Okay, so the dollar amount for fiscal 27,
Do you want to know the number
The
that
number
it's
we're asking
greater than the regular 3%, or what the total is?
The total is that you're requesting
the
to.
total we're requesting for 27.
11,968,827. By the way, when I get nervous, I get very specific.
Nothing,
that's
there's
okay.
nothing
And then
wrong with that. I'm looking for specific
Fiscal-
dollar
In
figures. so
fiscal
that-
28, what will we be asking for?
$12,327,891.
Do you have FY '29 by any chance?
She has them all.
Oh, okay, just curious.
$12,697,728.
Thank you very much.
Is that reflective on this page? I
The-
don't think it is.
The additional amounts to what the 3% are reflective on that page.
But then out to fiscal 30 at 1, I don't think shows up on there.
It
Okay.
does.
Okay.
So it's what a 3% increase would be,
Yeah.
plus the $232,404 gets us from the 11,620,000 in fiscal year 26 to the 11,968,000 in fiscal year
What's
27.
on there is what they're asking for beyond what's built into your plan.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
so this
so
chart,
this is
Yeah.
1.5%. Well,
so this chart is saying instead of 1.5, you'd like 3. You want 1.5 more, is that correct?
No, what it's saying is that in fiscal 27, instead of 3%, we want 2% more.
Okay.
We want 5%.
So-
And that's
so-
2%.
Gotcha, gotcha.
That's 2%,
So,
yes.
so this year not changing, but future
No,
years.
no, this year, we're not
ramp
asking
up.
for,
Gotcha,
like I
gotcha.
said, we'll take it, but we're not putting in a request for additional funds this year. We are sitting here watching what's happening with this budget and realizing that, this is not the year to ask for more money. But we also need you all to understand anything less than what's in the budget is going to be a real issue for your public library.
So just so I'm perfectly clear between the information you gave me and what Commissioner Rothstein talked about, and so the chart on the front page of the hearing paper, FY '27, the additional 174 is what you're requesting, and that's the extra?
Addition to the 3% that already is in the operating plan.
Okay, so this is two, okay, all
For
right.
2 years, yeah.
Thank-
The first year, we're asking for additional 2%. The second year, we're asking for 5%, above and beyond the 3% that's in the operating budget. This is the effect of the years that we received flat funding, like the pandemic, the years we received reduced funding. It catches up with you after a while.
okay, I apologize, and I know we're going around this in a circle. But on this briefing sheet, it says $169,220 FY '26. And then it goes $174,297 FY '27. That doesn't seem to be,
I don't think that's enough. I don't
That's
think
not
that's
right.
3%.
That's not.
No,
That-
we
that's
had,
my-
'cause
that-
we had
that's
met
my
with the
point.
budget office, we told them this was our ask, 5% next year, 7% the following year.
these numbers
These are not
are
accurate.
not matching what you're saying.
Okay.
And that's my concern, at least I don't think they are. Maybe they are.
The second year does not, no, but we can provide you with,
Yes, that's wrong.
Okay, yeah, so what's in front of me is wrong, and I just,
No, it's not wrong.
it's not wrong. Yes, it is wrong. Ugh.
Okay, and
I'm
this
confused.
gets complicated because you gave them one-time funding last year that was half of what had been planned. That was the 169,000. So if you just look at the FY '25 budget to the FY '26 budget, it will go up 169,000.
Okay.
Their starting point was what's built into the recommendation, which is why they were thinking 0. But mechanically, that's correct.
Yes.
So is this the 2% above the 3% that's embedded into the budget?
If you don't look at FY '26 and FY '27,
Okay.
then yes.
Okay.
Everything else that follows is what they're asking for beyond what is built into the plan.
But
Which
for
is-
this year, you're saying
Okay.
don't
Okay.
cut
Thank you very
anything
much.
from
We're
the
saying the
proposed.
11,620,000.
Yep, you want.
We'll keep the doors open and the lights
Yep,
on
yep,
and
yep,
all the
gotcha,
programs running.
gotcha. But in future years, you want it to step up. I got it.
Right, we're trying to do some future planning. Inflation has caught up with us. And we're at that point now where we either start cutting programs or we keep up with the increasing cost of doing business.
What's your current staffing status?
We have 264 staff positions that ranges from part-time hourly staff up to full-time staff. It's the same count we've had for the last 14 years. We haven't added a staff position in 14 years.
And how many are vacant?
That's a good question. I don't have my HR director here, but I would have to guess offhand, probably 4 or 5 at any one
Maintain-
time.
Yeah.
We're pretty prompt to hire back as soon as we can, especially now. We've battled the books in April, and we have summer reading coming up right behind that.
Okay. Okay, I apologize for the confusion. I just want to make sure my numbers.
It is confusing.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're good questions, Commissioner.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I got to compliment.
I'd rather,
and give
I'd
credit
rather
where
you
it's due.
ask and make sure that we're all, like, clear than,
Okay.
so.
Commissioners, any other discussion questions? Thank you, and as
Thank you very
always,
much.
you bring a
Thanks.
crowd.
Thank you very much. Have a good morning.
You too. Thank you.
Yep.
Approach the bench.
Hey, Joe Mama. Hey.
Nice seeing you. Penmar Services.
Penmar.
Morning.
Good morning. Would you like us to start, or do you want to wait for Commissioner Gordon, or?
Wait. Start.
Start at something?
Yeah,
Let's
start.
Hopefully, we'll be fairly brief. First of all, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Greg Miller, the President and CEO at Penmar Human Services. It's good to see you all again. I have with me our CFO, Marvin Piles, as well as Danielle Gatine, who's the administrator of most of our operations here in Carroll County. And I know that the commissioners are well aware of the supports that we provide at Penmar. So just very, very briefly, we have a PowerPoint we'd like to walk you through, and then we'll talk to you about what our ask is this morning. So our mission at Penmar Human Services is to support people to live courageously in pursuit of their best lives. Primarily, we're working with folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we work with them across a very, very wide domain, from residential supports to day supports. We do a lot of work with families. We administrate a large grant. Actually, it's not as large today as it was a couple of days ago because the legislature is cutting it significantly. But we just, our intent as an organization is to come alongside of people with disabilities as well as their families to help them get everything that they can out of their lives and to support their independence and the goals that they have in their lives, just like you and I. And I know that you all understand that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that this morning. We want to talk to you this morning about a project that we're going to undertake in fiscal year 25-26, and that is the renovation of a facility that we've purchased over in the Washington Heights section of that medical, the old, what was, you know, like, I don't know if they still call it the Washington Heights Medical Center. That's what it was when I was little, going to see my doctor over there. But that complex, we found a property over there that we would like to do a whole-scale renovation. And the reason that that facility is so important to us at Penmar is that over the course of the last several years, we've been listening to the voices of our families. Directionally, services and supports to people with disabilities have been provided across a wide array of different places. And in the nearer term future, we've been looking at providing as many supports as possible in the community, not in a facility-based situation, you know, old sheltered workshops that we have kind of evolved out of over the years are not the primary place for people to receive supports. But what we have found as we have provided as many supports possible in the community is that it is really limiting for some families the ability for their sons, their daughters, their loved ones to really have a full, meaningful life throughout the course of a week. And so we've kind of determined, after listening to the voices of these families, that what we really need to have as part of an array of services is what we do within other parts of our organization in Baltimore County and York County, and that's to kind of have a home base where somebody isn't going to come and spend their entire day there, but that place could be a place where they come and they spend a few hours of their day, you know, finding with the clientele that we work with, which can be very, very intense at certain times. Finding places that have adult changing tables for people to have those type of needs attended to in the local community can sometimes be a real challenge. And quite honestly, our goal is that people have meaningful lives and they have activity that is filled with purpose. And the last thing anybody wants is somebody showing up at the mall Monday through Friday, walking around for 3 or 4 hours because there's nothing else to do because it's 10 degrees outside. This facility that we're going to develop is going to allow us to provide a touch point for some limited facility-based services for families that have in the past had the opportunity to have their sons and daughters outside of their home for significant periods of time. And now, given the ability for us to be able to meet all of their needs in the community, many folks, as opposed to getting maybe 30 hours of support a week, are getting maybe 15 to 25 hours. And Danielle knows that so much better than I do. But we want to show you the scope of this project. If we could go to the next page. This facility we purchased several months ago. I don't think it's been quite a year since we purchased it, but we saw this facility and we thought, you know, this is in a great location, and we believe this provides the shell for us to be able to provide the type of supports that the folks that we work with each day deserve, and also will allow us to pretty much consolidate our work team in Carroll County. Right now, we utilize space at the nonprofit center. We still use a little bit of space at Stoner, although that's pretty much, that was the facility that Change owned years ago. And so our team is on, you know, some people come in 1 day a week, 2 weeks, and they have to go back and forth because we just don't have the amount of space necessary. And that, we believe, is a side benefit of having more or less a home base in Carroll County. So if what we want to do is, and I'm not going to bore you with all of the all of the floor plan, but we've provided that for you to look at.
we believe that this is absolutely going to not only allow us to better support our current clientele, but it's also going to allow us to be able to expand more supports for more families as we continue to grow and to meet the needs of the citizens of Carroll County with disabilities. So we purchased this facility for $875,000. Sticker shock is interesting with renovation right now, as you can imagine, but we've done a lot of due diligence. We've laid out a floor plan. We have talked with our board of directors significantly over time as to, do we want to do part of the project now? Should we do the entire project now? We've landed that we want to do the entire project now because we believe segmenting it is not only going to limit our ability to work with the folks that we support, but it's also going to drive costs higher in the future if we go and we try to do that. So we're looking at a renovation cost of this project of about $2.3 million. That includes everything to get us in there. There are accessibility challenges in the front of that building that we have to work through. But we believe that the floor plan that we've created with our architect is one that will absolutely allow Penmar Human Services to have a home base here in Carroll County that all of us will be very proud of, and to be able to properly support our constituency. We're here this morning to ask the commissioners, to ask you all to consider a one-time investment in the renovation of this facility of $200,000. We are going to, as an organization, invest our own resources in this. Penmar has a foundation that will also support this in a gift of approximately $200,000. And we would like to be able to complete this project in fiscal year 25-26. And so that's really what brings us here today, is we're putting our money up where our mouth is and saying, this is a big project. We are going to utilize as many of our organizational resources as we can to make this happen. But we love to provide the opportunity for Carroll County to also invest in this with a one-time investment of $200,000. So that's kind of the deal this morning. So I'm wondering if you'll have any questions or if I can help clarify the ask at all.
Where's this location again? You said
In
it's
Washington Heights. So the Washington Heights Medical Center, are you familiar with that off of Washington Road? Yeah, it was the gastrointestinal doctors. They had a whole practice there.
You kind of go through, you go up the
On
hill.
the left
into
side,
right.
big building on the left side there is about 7,000 square feet, and it's really a great location. Parking is good there. And like I said, we're not going to have a static group there every single day, but it'll be a touch point for the people that we support. And so we feel like it's a great location in Carroll County for folks.
It's on City and Water.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So with with this location, would that alleviate or remove any of the other two locations you have?
Yes. Our intention is that will become kind of the Penmar hub here in Carroll County, and that we would be able to effectively work with our team to utilize it's a two-story facility. The first floor is going to be primarily space where we would provide supports for the people that we work with each day, as well as a few conference rooms, things like that. And then the downstairs of the facility we would utilize to kind of bring our team back together.
So that would probably be more advantageous to you to be able to centralize everybody in one location. I assume.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, the idea of being 100% community-based is wonderful, until certain things happen, and then, we're your vehicles, People have to go get our vehicles from different places. If you have our team members actually do the driving, you have other issues there in terms of liability, all those type of things. We believe it just makes sense for us to have our team in one place where they can, do their great work, collaborate, and, problem solve from that one location, not all over the place, though. Yeah.
And you own this location?
We own this location, yes, sir.
Yeah, we purchased this location outright. We have no loan on this, and we want to walk out of this with free and clear. And we've had our eye on this in Carroll County for a couple years in terms of our investments as we worked with the transition of change into Penmar. And, timing is everything, but quite honestly, change merged into Penmar like 2 months before the pandemic. And the timing, while difficult, I'm not sure change would have even been able to exist through the pandemic. And so we've always been keeping our eye on what's the best way for us to truly be integrated into Carroll County as a main part of our service system. And we looked at other buildings and we looked at things, and when this facility came up, we jumped on it very, very quickly, because both the location and what it has to offer, like I said, there was a little bit of sticker shock, to see what the renovation is going to cost. But when this renovation is complete, that facility will be secure for 20, 30 years in terms of what we have there. So we're very excited about that. And I would also say, you provide an annual allocation to Penmar, of which we are very, very grateful. If you've been following what's been going on in Annapolis, it's been an interesting year. I think we've landed in a pretty good spot in terms of where everything is going to play out in terms of day-to-day supports and how organizations are supported. So that's kind of a good thing as well. But this ask is above and beyond, but it's a one-time ask. And I think it's a great, for me, it's a great way for Carroll County to invest in the programs of Penmar.
What grant got turned down legislatively? Was that state or federal?
Grant?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on in Annapolis. We administrate what's called the LISS grant, the Low Intensity Support Services grant, and we pretty much do that for everybody west of the Bay Bridge.
Okay.
There was $5 million statewide. We had about 3 of that. That grant has been cut down to $2 million in total. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be, we have some work to do to figure that out, because the legislature also, coming out of the House, said, well, we want you to cap the grants at $500. Well, the grants are currently capped at $2,000.
Right.
So what they're saying is, we want you to give out 4 times more grants, but we're taking 60% of your money away. And how are we going to do that with people? The way you process that is intense. Right. So we are strongly lobbying the Senate to up that to $1,000, which I believe they will do when they actually pass their budget this week. We'll see. Nothing's secure until it is. But it's an extra challenge for us, because we're going to have to figure out how to take basically a department of 5 people that are administrating $3 million. You can't take 5 people and administrate, $1 million and still make out. So, but I mean, these are the challenges that we face all the time at Penmar. And our goal is always that on the other side of what we have to figure out, let's be sure that the supports that we're providing to the people that we work with each day aren't compromised, and they're getting what they really need. And I think that this project in particular is us saying, we have listened to families that say, we love the community, but my son or daughter can't be out there 40 hours a week all the time. And there's just times where we need a place for them to be, where they're going to be safe, and they're going to be surrounded by people that can help, move them forward in their lives. So.
Okay, thanks a bunch.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for yours.
Now we have the Department of Management and Budget. Anything to say, conclude us here, or? Nope, okay. That was brief.
Wow.
Speechless.
And I've got something. And then, I think there's a question to just clarify the motion that was made. And let me say, and hopefully I don't cloud it up, fiscal year 25, their operating budget was $239,001.61. The recommended 26 budget was $246,171 and 171,660. So that was an increase of 7.2 million. And
But the schools.
the schools. The motion, the only motion we made.
It was an increase of 7.170.
Yeah, 7.2. Yeah.
Okay, if we want to round up,
Yeah,
okay. Okay,
7,170,050.
right.
Your motion was to add about 5.8 to make that 13 million total.
Correct.
And that
That is
was
correct.
the motion.
That was my question, yeah, I just wanted to clarify what it was,
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
track
yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So 13 million above MOE for,
Yeah,
and that
yes.
was the vote,
Yes,
okay, gotcha.
yes,
All right.
yes, yeah, 13 million above MOE.
Just want to be clear on one thing. There've been a number of comments about above maintenance of effort. You know, the amount we're increasing from year to year is not necessarily above maintenance of effort. Now, between 25 and 26, it's pretty close because enrollment didn't change very much. But in some years, those could be two very different numbers.
Yes.
And let me be clear with my colleagues here too. I don't oppose building in at 7.2 for the schools. This was the additional 5 that, just so we know.
Yeah, sorry.
I apologize, Joe, what'd you say?
Oh, no, I don't oppose the 7.2 going into the schools this year. It was the 5.8 that I had the concerns with, but
Yep.
I just wanted to be clear about that.
And I understand your comments about MOE. I mean, it's important for people to understand that, but I think for most people, it's about any increase over the previous year, regardless of what the formula is behind it. But I understand your point. I mean, it's much more complicated than just that.
And
It is
it's
certainly
come
a-
up a number of times, so that's why I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it'll keep coming up too.
If this stands, it's a $13 million increase over the funding in the
FY25.
current fiscal year.
Last year.
25.
Yes.
Okay, just correct.
And,
makes it
and
simpler.
so.
That
Ted-
helps.
Ted, one question, there's been so much misinformation. So when they had serious declining enrollment, the MOE would reduce based on the population of schools or not really? I'm
Maintenance of effort
oversimplifying.
requires you to fund the same amount per pupil.
Per pupil. So if there's
in theory-
100,000 less pupils, it's less.
Yes.
Yeah, because the MOE is based on per pupil. And the state reduced their funding based on per pupil.
Yes. And that's, why when we try and talk about how it's been MOE over a number of years, it gets very complicated because you can't just go from here to here. You have to look at each year, and if we had been at maintenance of effort, and then something happened, where would that leave you?
I assume the budget office worked with CCPS budget people. They have a spreadsheet of, I forget, 2019 on, the difference, maybe 2014, maybe it's 10 years, of the difference of MOE.
I don't know that I've seen their spreadsheet. but,
Okay.
Yeah, we have the information too.
Yeah, I think they were showing one in Annapolis to clarify that, like I say, there was so much talk that the county commissioners underfunded the schools, and my humble opinion, that's never happened, and you could say the 3 years it was MOE, you could say it was, but, it's, and so I think they had I forget, and maybe you said this, last year we were 41 million if you did
If you look in comparison to FY, I think it was 21, I used as a
Okay.
starting point.
Right.
And again, that same thing I was just saying, if you said, what if we had stayed at maintenance of effort and then stayed there again and stayed there again? The difference was about $40 million between what we could have legally done and what we actually did.
Yeah, yeah, and enrollment's a concern because this year it was predicted they'd increase, and that didn't happen to the extent they thought it was, and with all of this stuff going on, who knows, next year could decrease, you know?
Yes, and
And that hurts state funds.
right, we could be back to the same situation we had with the declining enrollments, where state funding was stagnant or even declining.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is even if you lose a few students, you lose the thousands of dollars of state funding that go along with those students, but it's spread across the organization, so you can't, you know, get rid of a teacher per se, or you know, some either other supports, or shutter a classroom or something, because you know, they're just, it's too wide. If you only had one school and it was only everybody concentrated in one place, maybe you could reduce your ongoing costs, but it just didn't help.
It's
MOE does take in consideration inflation. Ted?
No,
It doesn't.
right, MOE is a very simple thing. It just says, what did you fund? I mean, simple
Sorta.
conceptually.
No, but
It just
I
says.
just want to be clear.
How many students did you have last year? You divide that into the funding, and then next year, you have to have that same per pupil number. So it doesn't look at any cost, doesn't look at, did you have to add a teacher? It doesn't say, did electricity go up? It just says, same number of dollars per student. And from school systems' point of view, they actually will point to that as a weakness. They'll say,
Right.
well, wait, you know, funding us at maintenance of effort ignores that costs are going up.
Yep.
Yeah, unless you have rising enrollment, that, again, I think that helped, you know, just like the declining I was saying doesn't really help the balance sheet. Rising, as long as it's just rising a little bit, doesn't hurt it either, but could help cover those, you know, slight inflationary costs and other things. When it rises too much, you have other problems. When it decreases too much, you have problems. So, yeah, it's
Yes.
weird.
And for the record, a lot of other counties are having a lot of issues.
Oh, yeah.
As, you know, the other disingenuous comment was, you know, Carroll County's the only one has this problem. Well,
Didn't I hear something the other day, Montgomery County's like gonna lay off like 1,000 people or
I
something?
think, and
really?
Hartford County and
Hartford.
Baltimore County and Howard County.
Hartford County stopped summer school. Howard County's knocking off people. Somerset County, I mean, they're all figuring out, I mean, Garrett County last year shut down a school. I mean, they're all,
Yeah, Garrett
Figure
County
it out.
closed all middle schools.
right. So,
It's
Yeah,
I give them credit if all this works out. They've fought a battle, and at Carroll County, you talk about us being the middle county, and schools were the middle size, and I think it's like, unfortunately, some families, the middle kid gets ignored. And we're
Oh,
considered
absolutely.
too wealthy, which I don't feel like,
Right.
when I walk around Carroll County, I don't feel like we're too wealthy.
Right.
You
the
know?
wealth calculation hurts us in
yes.
terms of state funding.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
And especially when you go up to the northern, by our part of the county up north, the areas of concentrated poverty up there.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Okay, did we clarify or confuse?
No, I just wanted to.
Yeah,
just wanted to
no,
make sure
no,
everybody
I'm
understood
saying
where we
to
were.
those listening,
Yeah, oh,
you
yeah,
know.
well,
Yeah.
I can't vouch for everybody
So,
else out there.
I guess we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.